The transport shuttle descended through the thick amber clouds of Kepler 442b's atmosphere, its hull groaning against the alien winds. Dr. Elena Voss pressed her face to the small porthole, watching as the research station emerged from the swirling mists like a metal flower blooming in space. 3 years of preparation had led to this moment, her first assignment studying an intelligent alien species. The Rilani were beautiful creatures, everyone said so. Their files described them as ethereal, beings with perfect proportions moving like dancers through their crystal cities. Elena had spent months learning their basic language and customs, but nothing had prepared her for actually seeing them. The docking bay doors hissed open, and Elena stepped onto the station with her single travel bag. The artificial gravity felt lighter here, calibrated somewhere between Earth and the Rilani homeworld. She took a deep breath of recycled air and looked around. That's when she saw her first Rilani. Commander Nix glided toward her with movements so fluid they seemed almost liquid. He stood nearly 7 feet tall with silver-blue skin that caught the station's lights like polished metal. His limbs were long and elegant, his face sharp and symmetrical. When he spoke, his voice carried musical undertones that made Elena's translator work overtime. "Dr. Voss, welcome to Research Station Harmony," he said, inclining his head in what she recognized as a formal greeting. "I am Commander Nix. I will oversee your work here." Elena nodded back, trying not to stare. "Thank you, Commander. I'm excited to begin studying your people's relationship with the crystalline formations." Something flickered across Nix's features, too quick for Elena to interpret. "Yes, the crystals. Your research partner is waiting in Laboratory 7. She is adequate for your needs." The way he said adequate made Elena's stomach twist slightly, but she followed him through the station's curved corridors. The walls were lined with a strange material that seemed to pulse with soft light, responding to their footsteps. Other Rilani moved past them, each one tall and graceful, each one staring at Elena with curious silver eyes. Laboratory 7 was smaller than Elena had expected, tucked away in what felt like a forgotten corner of the station. Commander Nix gestured toward the door but didn't enter himself. "Your partner's name is Kira. She speaks your language well enough. Try not to waste too much time on social matters." He paused, his silver eyes growing cold. "She has other concerns to focus on." Before Elena could ask what he meant, the commander was gone, gliding away down the corridor with that same impossible grace. Elena pressed the door control and stepped inside. The laboratory was dim, lit only by the soft glow of crystal samples, arranged on various tables. Equipment hummed quietly in the corners and data screens flickered with incomprehensible Rilani text. At first, Elena thought the room was empty. Then she heard a soft sound, like someone trying not to breathe too loudly. "Hello?" Elena called out. "I'm Dr. Elena Voss. I'm looking for Kira." A figure emerged from behind a tall equipment rack, moving much more carefully than the other Rilani Elena had seen. This one was shorter, though still taller than Elena, and her movements were hesitant, almost apologetic. "I am Kira," the figure said, stepping into the light. Elena's breath caught. Kira was beautiful, but in a completely different way from the other Rilani. Where they were sharp angles and perfect symmetry, she had softer curves. Her silver-blue skin was the same, her eyes the same bright silver, but her face was rounder, more expressive. And her body. Elena realized she was staring and quickly looked away, but not before noticing that Kira's hips were wider than what seemed to be the Rilani norm. She looked more substantial, more real somehow. "Dr. Voss," Kira said, and her voice carried the same musical quality but with something else underneath. Uncertainty, maybe even fear. "I hope I will be suitable for your research needs. I know I am not. I know you may have expected someone else." "What do you mean?" Elena asked, setting down her bag and moving closer. "You're exactly who I was supposed to meet, right? My research partner?" Kira's silver eyes widened slightly as if she hadn't expected such a direct response. "Yes, but surely Commander Nix explained about my Condition? What condition? Elena was genuinely confused now. Are you sick? Injured? For a moment, Kira just stared at her. Then something extraordinary happened. She laughed. It was a small sound, quickly stifled, but it transformed her entire face. You really don't know, Kira said, wonder creeping into her voice. You look at me, and you don't see. She gestured at herself, specifically at her hips, with a motion that seemed to carry years of shame. Elena looked where Kira was gesturing, then back at her face. I see a person I'm supposed to work with. Should I be seeing something else? Kira's hands trembled slightly as she moved to one of the crystal samples. Among my people, I am unfit. The Council of Genetic Harmony declared me unsuitable for reproduction when I reached maturity. My body does not meet the standards of our species. I am too wide, too curved. It is considered a genetic flaw. Elena felt something hot and angry rise in her chest. That's ridiculous. It is our way, Kira said quietly, not looking at Elena. Those who are genetically suitable are chosen for the mating ceremonies. They live in the central districts, they have status, they contribute to our future. The rest of us, we work in places like this. We contribute what we can to society, but we do not reproduce. We are evolutionary mistakes. Elena watched Kira's careful movements around the laboratory, the way she seemed to take up as little space as possible, the way her shoulders curved inward as if she was trying to hide. And she felt something she hadn't expected, a fierce, protective instinct toward this brilliant, broken woman who had been told she was worthless. Well, Elena said, moving to stand beside Kira at the crystal table. Lucky for both of us, I'm not Rilani. And where I come from, diversity makes us stronger, not weaker. Kira's hand stilled on the crystal sample. She looked up at Elena with those bright silver eyes, and for the first time since Elena had arrived, she seemed to really see her. You are very strange, Dr. Elena Voss, Kira said softly. Elena smiled. You have no idea. 3 weeks into their partnership, Elena had learned to read the subtle signs of Kira's discomfort, the way her shoulders would tense when other Rilani entered their lab, how she would step backward whenever someone looked at her too long, the careful way she moved through the station corridors, always keeping to the edges, always making herself smaller. It made Elena's heart ache every single time. The crystals are responding again, Kira said, her voice filled with excitement as she leaned over their latest experiment. The blue-green formations on the table pulsed with soft light, reacting to the bioelectric field generator they had built together. Elena moved closer to observe, accidentally brushing against Kira's arm. Kira immediately stepped away, that familiar, apologetic motion that Elena had come to hate. Sorry, Kira mumbled, but Elena caught her wrist gently. Don't, Elena said softly. Don't apologize for existing in space, Kira. You belong here just as much as anyone else. Kira's silver eyes met, hers, confusion and something else flickering there. I don't understand you, Elena. You speak to me as if what? As if I matter. The words hit Elena like a physical blow. She released Kira's wrist but didn't step back. You do matter. Your mind, your insights, your research, you're brilliant, Kira. These crystal formations respond to you better than anyone else on this station. It was true. Over the past weeks, Elena had watched Kira work with the alien crystals, and it was like watching magic. Where other researchers struggled, to get even basic responses, Kira could coax the formations into complex patterns of light and energy. She had an intuitive understanding that Elena's instruments could barely measure. That's just because I'm expendable, Kira said, turning back to the crystals. They let me work with dangerous materials because if something goes wrong... Stop. Elena's voice was sharper than she intended. Stop talking about yourself like that. Kira looked surprised at Elena's tone. I don't understand why it bothers you. Elena ran her hands through her dark hair, trying to find the right words. Where I come from on Earth, we used to think like your people do. We used to believe there was only one way to be beautiful, only one way to be valuable. It took us centuries to learn how wrong we were. But surely your people have standards. We do. But our standards include everyone. We learned that the things that make us different make us stronger. Your wider hips, your curves. On Earth, those would be seen as signs of strength, of the ability to bear healthy children. Kira's cheeks darkened with what Elena had learned was a Rilani blush. You don't understand our biology. I understand that your council is made up of idiots. The words hung in the air between them. Kira stared at Elena with wide eyes, and for a moment Elena worried she had gone too far. Then Kira did something unexpected. She smiled. A real smile. Not the careful, apologetic expression she usually wore. You truly are the strangest being I have ever met, Kira said, and there was warmth in her voice now. They worked in comfortable silence for the next hour, their hands occasionally brushing, as they adjusted instruments or moved crystal samples. Elena noticed that Kira no longer pulled away from these small contacts. Instead, she seemed to lean into them, as if starved for simple human, or in this case, alien touch. The breakthrough came just after the station's artificial evening cycle began. Kira had been working with a particularly stubborn crystal formation, trying to map its energy patterns when suddenly it exploded into brilliant light. Elena! Kira called out, excitement making her voice higher. Look at this! Elena rushed over to see the crystal pulsing in perfect harmony with Kira's heartbeat, displaying patterns more complex than anything they had recorded before. How are you doing that? Elena breathed, watching the mesmerizing display. I don't know, Kira said, holding her hands near the crystal. The patterns shifted and swirled, responding to her movements. It feels like it's listening to me. Elena activated their recording equipment, but she couldn't stop watching Kira's face. The usual tension was gone, replaced by wonder and joy. This was who Kira really was, Elena realized. Not the broken, apologetic creature the Rilani society had created, but a brilliant scientist with an intuitive gift that nobody else possessed. Kira, Elena said softly, has anyone ever told you that you're extraordinary? The crystal's light flickered as Kira's concentration wavered. She looked at Elena with those bright silver eyes, and Elena saw tears gathering there. No, Kira whispered. Never. Well, you are. What you're doing with these crystals, I've never seen anything like it. You're not just a good scientist. You're gifted in ways that your people don't even understand. Kira's hands trembled as she stepped back from the crystal, which immediately dimmed. Why are you saying these things to me? Because they're true. Because someone should have been saying them to you your whole life. Elena moved closer carefully, as if approaching a wounded animal. Because the way your people treat you is wrong, and I need you to know that. But I am genetically inferior. Says who? A council of people who decided that only one body type is acceptable? Kira, genetic diversity is crucial for any species' survival. The traits your people call flaws might be exactly what saves them someday. Kira was quiet for a long moment, staring at the now dim crystal. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible. My grandmother told me stories once before she died, about the old days, before the genetic council. She said Rilani used to come in many shapes, many sizes. She said I looked like her great-grandmother. What happened to that diversity? The council said it was inefficient. They decided on the perfect form and began encouraging only certain genetic lines. Kira's voice grew bitter. Now anyone who doesn't match their ideal is considered a mistake. Elena felt that familiar anger rise in her chest. You're not a mistake, Kira. You're exactly who you're supposed to be. As if responding to Elena's conviction, the crystal suddenly flared back to life, brighter than before. Both women stared at it in amazement. It's responding to both of us now, Kira said, wonder in her voice. Elena looked at the pulsing light, then at Kira's amazed face, and felt something shift inside her chest. This brilliant, beautiful woman deserved so much more than the life her people had given her. Maybe, Elena said quietly. It's time we showed everyone else what you can really do. The accident happened on a Tuesday, during what should have been a routine survey of the crystal caves beneath the station. Elena and Kira had been mapping the underground formations for weeks, discovering that the crystals grew in vast networks that pulsed with their own mysterious energy. "The readings are off the charts down here," Elena said, checking her scanner as they descended deeper into the cavern. The walls around them glowed with soft blue light, creating an otherworldly cathedral of stone and crystal. Kira moved ahead, her hands trailing along the crystal formations. Wherever she touched, the lights brightened, as if the crystals were greeting an old friend. "There's something different about this section," she said, pressing her palm against a particularly large formation. "The energy feels older somehow." That's when they heard it, a low rumbling sound that seemed to come from the very bones of the planet. "Elena," Kira's voice was tight with fear. "We need to leave. Now." But it was too late. The rumbling grew louder, and suddenly the ceiling above them cracked. Chunks of rock began falling, and Elena dove toward Kira just as a massive boulder crashed down where she had been standing. The world exploded into dust and darkness. When Elena came to, her head was pounding and her mouth tasted like blood. She could barely see through the settling dust, but she could hear something that made her heart stop. Kira's voice, weak and filled with pain. "Elena? Elena, are you hurt?" Elena pushed herself up, ignoring the sharp pain in her ribs. "I'm okay. Where are you?" "Here. I think I'm trapped." Elena's eyes adjusted to the dim light from the surviving crystals, and her heart sank. Kira was pinned beneath a fallen rock, her left leg twisted at an angle that made Elena's stomach turn. "Oh, Kira." Elena crawled over to her, careful not to disturb the unstable rocks around them. "How bad is it?" "Bad," Kira admitted, her face pale with shock. "I can't feel my leg." Elena activated her emergency beacon, but the signal was weak this far underground. They might be trapped for hours before rescue arrived. She looked at Kira's injury and knew they didn't have hours. "I'm going to get you out of here," Elena said, examining the rock that had Kira pinned. "This is going to hurt, but I need to move this stone." "Elena, no. It's too heavy. You'll hurt yourself." "I'm not leaving you here." Elena positioned herself against the boulder, using a piece of fallen crystal as a lever. "On 3, try to pull your leg free. 1, 2, 3. Elena threw all her weight against the lever while Kira pulled. The stone shifted just enough for Kira to drag herself free, but the effort left both women gasping. Elena immediately moved to examine Kira's leg. It was broken, badly, with a cut that was bleeding more than Elena liked. Without thinking, she tore strips from her own shirt to make bandages. "What are you doing?" Kira asked, her voice weak. "Taking care of you." Elena's hands were gentle as she cleaned the wound, her touch careful and sure. "This might hurt, but I need to stop the bleeding." As Elena worked, something strange happened. Kira, who had spent her entire life being told her body was wrong, felt Elena's hands treating her with something she had never experienced before: reverence. Elena touched her injured leg not with disgust or clinical detachment, but with the same care someone might show a precious work of art. "Why are you doing this?" Kira whispered, tears running down her cheeks. Elena looked up from her work, her hands still gentle on Kira's leg. "What do you mean? You're touching me like I'm not broken." Elena's expression softened. "You're not broken, Kira. You never were. But my body, your body is perfect exactly as it is." Elena's voice was firm but kind. "Your wider hips, they're a sign of strength. Your curves, they're beautiful. Everything about you that your people call wrong is actually exactly right." Kira stared at her, unable to process what she was hearing. "I don't understand." Elena sat back on her heels, still keeping one hand on Kira's uninjured leg. "In human culture, we have a saying. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. It means that different people find different things beautiful. Your people have decided there's only one way to be attractive, but that's not how the universe works. But reproduction is about more than just appearance. It's about genetic diversity, about strength, about the ability to adapt and survive. Elena's eyes grew distant. On Earth, we nearly destroyed ourselves trying to create perfect humans. We learned the hard way that perfection is death, diversity is life. As Elena spoke, the crystals around them began to glow brighter, responding to something in the air between them. Kira noticed it first. Elena, look. The crystals weren't just glowing, they were singing. A low harmonic sound filled the cavern, and the light patterns were more complex than anything they had recorded before. They're responding to us, Elena breathed. To both of us. Together. Kira tried to sit up, wincing as pain shot through her leg. This has never happened before. The crystals have never been this active. Elena helped her lean against a smooth stone wall, then looked around at the glowing formations. Maybe they're responding to something your people have forgotten. What do you mean? Elena was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then she pulled out her scanner and began taking readings. Kira, you said your grandmother told you stories about the old days. About Rilani who looked different, who had different body types. Yes, but what if those stories weren't just stories? What if the genetic diversity your people eliminated was actually important for some reason? The crystal's song grew louder, and Kira felt something stirring in her memory. My grandmother said the crystals used to sing for the old ones, the ones with bodies like mine. Elena's scanner beeped frantically. Kira, your bioelectric signature is completely different from the other Rilani I've scanned. It's stronger, more complex. What does that mean? I think it means you're not a genetic mistake. I think you're exactly what nature intended. Elena looked at her with growing excitement. And I think these crystals know it. As if responding to Elena's words, the crystals around them pulsed in perfect unison, their light washing over both women like a blessing. For the first time in her life, Kira felt something she had never dared to feel before, the possibility that she might actually be exactly who she was supposed to be. The rescue team found them 6 hours later, following the beacon signal through the collapsed tunnels. Commander Nix led the group himself, his silver eyes cold as they surveyed the scene. Elena supporting an injured Kira, while crystals sang around them in harmonious light. What happened here? He demanded, his musical voice sharp with disapproval. Cave in, Elena said simply, helping the medics load Kira onto a stretcher. We need to get her to the medical bay immediately. But Nix wasn't looking at Kira's injuries. He was staring at the crystals, which continued their strange symphony, even as the rescue team moved through the cavern. The formations have never exhibited this behavior before, he said, suspicion creeping into his voice. What did you do? We discovered something important, Elena replied, her voice carrying a new edge of authority. Something your people need to know about. 3 days later, Kira sat in the medical bay while Elena paced before a wall of data screens. Her broken leg was healing in a biocast, but that wasn't what had both women on edge. It was what Elena's tests had revealed. Show me again, Kira said quietly. Elena pulled up the genetic analysis on the main screen. Your DNA contains markers that none of the other Rilani on this station have. Markers that match genetic sequences I found in your people's oldest historical records. You accessed the archives? With Commander Nix's permission, though he wasn't happy about it. Elena highlighted sections of the genetic code. Kira, you're not genetically inferior. You're genetically original. Your body type represents what the Rilani species looked like before the Council began their improvement program. Kira stared at the data, her mind racing. If that's true, then why? An alarm began blaring throughout the station. Emergency lights flashed red, and the intercom crackled to life. All personnel to emergency stations. Medical emergency in the residential sector. This is not a drill. Elena and Kira exchanged glances before Elena helped her friend to her feet. They made their way to the main corridor, where chaos was unfolding. Rilani were collapsing. The beautiful, genetically perfect beings were falling to their knees, their silver skin turning pale and sickly. Some were coughing up blue fluid, others simply crumpled unconscious to the floor. What's happening? Elena demanded, as medical teams rushed past. Them, Dr. Thane, the station's chief medical officer, paused long enough to answer. Some kind of plague. It's spreading through the residential sectors. We've never seen anything like it. Elena felt ice form in her stomach. Who's affected? Everyone in the central districts. All the genetically approved populations. Dr. Thane's face was grim. But strangely, none of the service workers or research staff have shown symptoms. Elena and Kira looked at each other with growing understanding. The service workers, Kira said slowly. They're all like me, aren't they? The ones deemed genetically unfit. Dr. Thane nodded absently, then hurried away to deal with another emergency. Elena, Kira grabbed her friend's arm. If what you discovered is true, if I represent the original Rilani genetics, then you might be immune to whatever is killing the others. Elena's mind was racing. We need to get to the lab now. They worked through the night while the station descended into panic around them. Elena ran blood tests on Kira and compared them to samples from the affected Rilani. What she found made her hands shake with excitement and terror. There, she pointed to her screen. The plague targets a specific genetic marker, one that was artificially enhanced during your people's genetic modification program. And those with the original genetics, completely immune. The plague can't even recognize your cellular structure as a target. Kira leaned back in her chair, the weight of discovery crushing down on her. My people spent centuries eliminating the very genetics that could save them. We have to tell the council. They won't listen. Not to me. Elena stood up, her jaw set, with determination. Then we make them listen. The Council of Genetic Harmony met in emergency session the next morning. The plague had spread to 3 more districts, and panic was setting in. Commander Nix looked haggard as he called the meeting. To order. We need solutions, he announced. Our best minds are working on treatments, but so far, I have the solution. All eyes turned to Elena as she entered the chamber, supporting Kira on her crutches. Murmurs of disapproval rippled through the room. Dr. Voss, Commander Nix's voice, was icy. This is a closed session, and why have you brought her? Because she's the key to saving your entire species, Elena said firmly. She activated her datapad, projecting her findings onto the chamber's main screen. The plague targets genetically modified Rilani. Those with original genetics are completely immune. The room erupted in angry voices, but Elena continued speaking over them. Kira and others like her carry the genetic markers your species needs. To survive, they're not inferior, they're essential. Council member Vera, an elderly Rilani with sharp features, stood up. This is ridiculous. You're suggesting that genetic refuse could somehow... I'm suggesting that your genetic refuse is about to become your genetic salvation, Elena cut her off. Unless you want to watch your perfect society die while the unfit survive. Chamber fell silent. On the screens around them, medical reports continued to stream in. More cases, more deaths, all among the genetically approved populations. Kira stepped forward, her voice steady despite the crutches. I've spent my entire life being told I was a mistake, that my body was wrong, that I had nothing to contribute to our future. She looked around the chamber at the faces that had condemned her. But I'm still here. I'm still healthy. And I'm offering to help save the very people who cast me out. Commander Nix stared at her for a long moment. Finally, he spoke. What do you propose? Elena stepped beside Kira, showing a united front. Immediate genetic screening of all unfit populations. Development of treatments based on their immune responses, and, she paused, recognition that genetic diversity isn't weakness, it's survival. For the first time in her life, Kira saw something in the Council's eyes that she had never seen before. Respect. And perhaps, just perhaps, hope. The Tao. Uprising had begun not with weapons or violence, but with truth, and sometimes, Elena thought as she watched Kira address the Council with newfound confidence, truth was the most powerful weapon of all. 6 months later, Kira stood before the great assembly of Rilani, no longer the broken outcast who had hidden in Laboratory 7. The chamber was filled with representatives from across their homeworld, all gathered to witness something unprecedented in their history: the inauguration of the first genetically unfit Rilani to lead the Council of Genetic Harmony. Elena watched from the diplomatic section, wearing the formal robes of Earth's first permanent ambassador to the Rilani people. The transformation she had witnessed still amazed her. Kira moved with confidence now, her wider hips no longer a source of shame but a symbol of survival itself. Today marks not just a change in leadership, Kira's voice carried clearly through the vast chamber, but a fundamental shift in how we understand ourselves as a species. The plague had been stopped, but not before it claimed nearly 30% of the genetically perfect population. The treatment Elena and Kira developed, based on the immune responses of the original genetic types, had saved countless lives. More importantly, it had shattered the myth of genetic superiority that had ruled Rilani society for centuries. For too long we believed that perfection meant sameness, Kira continued. We eliminated diversity in pursuit of an ideal that nearly destroyed us. Today we choose a different path. Elena smiled as she remembered the weeks following the plague's end. The unfit Rilani had emerged from the shadows, no longer ashamed of their bodies. They had been the nurses who cared for the sick, the researchers who developed treatments, the strong ones who carried their society through its darkest hour. But the most remarkable change had been in how they saw themselves. "I want to tell you about the crystals," Kira said, her voice growing warm. "Our ancestors knew something we forgot. The crystals don't sing for perfection, they sing for diversity. They respond not to genetic uniformity, but to the rich complexity of life itself." In the months since the cave-in, Elena and Kira had made incredible discoveries. The crystal networks weren't just formations, they were a form of biological computer, evolved over millions of years to interact with Rilani genetics. But they only responded fully to the original genetic patterns, the ones the Council had tried to eliminate. The unfit Rilani could make the crystals sing, could coax from them technologies and knowledge that had been lost for generations. They were the key to unlocking their planet's greatest mysteries. "The mating ceremonies will be different now," Kira announced, and Elena saw several council members shift uncomfortably. "No longer will we exclude those whose bodies don't match arbitrary standards. All Rilani who wish to contribute to our genetic future will be welcomed, celebrated, and honored." Elena's heart swelled with pride. The new ceremonies had been beautiful, beyond description. Rilani of all body types came together in celebration of diversity itself. Kira had been one of the first to be formally recognized as not just suitable for reproduction, but as a treasure, a keeper of ancient genetics that would strengthen their species for generations to come. "And I want to speak of friendship," Kira said, her silver eyes finding Elena in the crowd. "Of how one human's refusal to accept our prejudices opened our eyes to our own beauty." Elena felt tears prick her eyes as Kira continued. "Dr. Elena Voss could have simply done her research and left us to our beliefs. Instead, she showed us that true strength comes not from conformity, but from embracing what makes us different. She taught us to see ourselves as sacred." The word sacred rippled through the chamber. It had become central to the new Rilani philosophy, the idea that every body, every genetic variation, every difference was not a flaw to be corrected, but a sacred gift to be treasured. "The human concept of love," Kira said, her voice growing softer, "teaches us that true partnership comes not from finding someone identical to ourselves, but from celebrating the ways we complement each other." Elena thought of the quiet moments she and Kira had shared over the past months, the way Kira had slowly learned to accept compliments about her appearance, how her posture had changed from apologetic to proud. The evening when Kira had finally asked Elena to explain human concepts of beauty, and Elena had spent hours describing the vast range of what humans found attractive. "Today, I take leadership of this council not as someone who overcame genetic inferiority," Kira announced, "but as someone who represents genetic necessity. We are all necessary. We are all valuable. We are all sacred." The chamber erupted in applause, but Elena barely heard it. She was remembering the night before, when, She and Kira had walked through the crystal gardens that had been built around the station. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't come here?" Kira had asked, her hand brushing against Elena's as they walked. "I try not to think about it," Elena had replied. "It's too sad to imagine." "I think about it sometimes," Kira had said quietly. "I think I would have spent my whole life believing I was broken. I would never have known that someone could look at me and see something beautiful." Elena had stopped walking then, turning to face her friend, her partner, her colleague, her dearest connection in all the universe. "You are beautiful, Kira. But more than that, you're strong and brilliant and kind. You're everything your people need and everything they were foolish enough to almost throw away." Now, watching Kira take her oath of office, Elena felt the weight of what they had accomplished together. They hadn't just saved a species from plague, they had saved them from themselves. "As my first act as council leader," Kira announced, "I established the Elena Voss Institute for Genetic Diversity, dedicated to studying and celebrating the variations that make life resilient." Elena gasped, unprepared for such an honor. Around her, the diplomatic section erupted in applause. "Furthermore," Kira continued, "I request that Ambassador Voss serve as our permanent advisor on interspecies cooperation and genetic ethics." Elena stood up, her heart full to bursting. "I accept with honor." Later, as the ceremony wound down, and representatives began to mingle, Elena and Kira found themselves alone on a balcony overlooking the crystal gardens. The formations pulsed with gentle light, singing their eternal song of diversity and life. "We did it," Kira said softly, leaning against the railing. "We actually changed everything." Elena moved to stand beside her, their shoulders touching. "You did it, I just reminded you of what was already true." Kira turned to look at her, silver eyes bright with tears of joy. "No, Elena. We did it together. And that's how we'll continue. Together, celebrating what makes us different, stronger, because of our diversity." Below them, Rilani of all shapes and sizes moved through the gardens, their children playing among the singing crystals. The future stretched before them, uncertain but hopeful, built on the foundation that every being, regardless of how they looked, was sacred, necessary, and beautiful. And in that moment, Elena knew that she had found not just a friend, but a partnership that would reshape both their world's understanding of what it truly meant to be alive.